Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regular board meeting for the month of May. Appropriate notice has been given. Roll call, please.
Mr. Chu?
Here.
Mr. Craig?
Here.
Mrs. Maya?
Here.
Mrs. Mikulski?
Here.
Mrs. Savarino? Is she here? Okay. Mrs. Seltzer?
Here.
Mrs. Sheridan Celia?
Here.
Mrs. Sherman?
Here.
Mr. Taby?
Here.
Mr. Dilkus?
Here.
Mrs. Caden?
Here, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We were previously in executive session. Can I get a motion to exit executive session?
So moved.
And a second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Without further ado, we had a tough meeting last Monday, and what a joy this will be as a different kind of presentation. We have Ms. DeAngelis' wonderful accordion club coming to perform this evening. Are they going to be staying there, or are they coming forward?
They are going to march on up.
They're going. Oh, even better. Okay. So whenever you are ready, thank you so much. The accordion club.
And this is Mrs. Joanna Darrow. She's the teacher, and she's the one who's the talent behind all of this.
That was absolutely incredible, and not only was it just a joy to listen to, but very impressive that, this was only a couple of months of practice, and that was an incredible performance from all four of you. Thank you so much for coming and teaching some of our students, and thank you to the students for coming and sharing their talents with all of us. This was wonderful. Thank you. Very impressive. All right. So Dr. McDowell, that is a rough act to follow. But Dr. McDowell is going to present to us kind of where we are, what we should be looking to for next year. And I'm going to move out of the way.
Thank you, Mom. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. As promised, we wanted to make sure that we were painting the appropriate picture for what we should expect for next school year. And so the title of our presentation this evening is Looking Ahead to 24-25. Still the theme of shifting from academic recovery to rigor. And so we're going to go through what is included in terms of how we're going to be tackling this task, given a very challenging budgetary season. And so, as everything that we do, it is driven by our mission and our vision. And so those are the guiding principles for our work. And so our leadership actions as a school system are to analyze current systems and remove barriers, move from compliance-driven activities to capability-building systems really focused on instructional improvement, reframing and shifting to support effective teaching, as well as committing to sustaining strong leadership in our schools, as well as supporting and retaining dedicated faculty and staff. And so we wanted to reiterate again, we have two priorities for the 24-25 school year. First, supporting rigorous learning environments, looking at engaging differentiated instruction, tiered systems of student-level support, expanding opportunities for our educators to come together and plan and do their work, addressing the curriculum shifts coming from the State Department of Education, reinforcing our student support model, which includes academics, culture, as well as mental health, and then also building capacity for inclusive classrooms. Our second priority is supporting our infrastructure. How do we ensure there's appropriate workspace for all staff? How do we recapture educational space in our schools? How do we continually improve safety services and support for our students? And then how do we maintain our facilities, as well as planning for future facilities needs, as well as how do we stay above the curve in terms of technology investments and services and support? And then ultimately, how do we improve communication for all of these things? And so it really starts with our faculty and staff. And so in this presentation, we're going to share information that may or may not be just common working knowledge. And so first and foremost, every faculty and staff member receives their annual contractual salary increases, which includes, for those who take advantage, health and wellness. We have employee assistance programs, as well as extra duty pay opportunities. And based on partnership with our association, we introduced this past year recruitment and retention bonuses. As promised last year, based on not just community feedback, but also it being the right thing to do, we went on a 2-year journey in order to dramatically update our compensation package for our instructional classroom assistants. And so last year, the first half of that compensation increase went forward, and year 2, to make it whole, is included this year. In addition, and this is extremely new, is that we went out and we secured an additional culture and climate grant with the sole focus of supporting our staff by the reclaiming of teacher time through the investigation and implementation of policies to help reduce administrative paperwork, minutia, and other tasks that really pull them away from supporting students in classroom instruction. And so when we talk about our schools, schools are not just buildings, schools are not just the culmination of things, schools are people. And so faculty and staff are at the foundation of our schools, but they also require operational support, which comes in the form of administrative supplies, facilities and custodial services, technology, communication, and the like. In addition to making sure that we are able to deliver on the promise of our students having not just a thorough and efficient education, but having a well-rounded educational experience, which includes clubs, extracurricular activities, field trips, assemblies, celebrations, and other opportunities for students to engage. In addition to classroom support, curriculum, professional development, instructional materials for students, and tools needed to engage students for staff. And so this year, we will be digging a bit deeper this summer in K through 5 literacy. And so our goal is to close opportunity gaps for K through 5 students with access to programming and resources, and also looking at what are things that are getting in the way that are contributing to disparate outcomes among students. And so this is going to be an internal audit. We're going to be utilizing the expertise of our own faculty and staff in order to run this summer-based project. We knew that with the standards changing in literacy and mathematics, now was a good time for us to take a deeper look in what we're doing, the resources that we're providing. And we're going to be isolating that audit this year, specifically K-5 literacy, and then we'll expand to secondary in subsequent years. We're also introducing a new curriculum platform. It's extremely important for our educators to not have to go to 4 or 5 different locations in order to find instructional resources, but it's also critically important that families and caregivers also have access to the curriculum tools that their children are being exposed to. And so we're seeking to coordinate and bring all of those resources together in one location, with staff gaining access to this new curriculum platform this summer, and families being introduced with how to access it during back-to-school nights in September. There's also been lots of discussion about explicit literacy instruction, research-based, Lucy Calkins, balanced literacy, and the like. And so dependent on what side of the discussion you happen to be, we in Collingswood have always taken a balanced approach to literacy instruction, and this year is no different, with a few changes. And so we know that we're going to need to be responsive to the K-5 learning standards revisions, but we're also introducing, through the tool of Amplify, a universal screener. And so making sure that we're using it to determine to what extent core reading instruction is enabling students to meet and exceed expectations. And so we'll be adding that. In addition, we will be adding a new tool to focus on phonemic awareness. In addition to decoding of text, we'll be expanding from K1 to also K2, and we will build over time. In addition to some of the other resources, and specifically those of note, we're taking a look at our crosswalks, which includes the Holocaust, the Amistad, climate change, DEI, and informational literacy. At the middle school level, we'll be looking at learning standards revisions, in addition to embarking on a 2-year journey to shift to Readers Writers Workshop at the secondary level. We'll be looking at how do we support our multilingual learners, specifically through our intensive ESL program. We have students that have interruptions in formal education, and we are putting resources behind support for those students as well, in addition to students that have been with us for a year or 2 who are in need of bridge level services as they transition to an English dominant environment. In addition to high school learning standards revisions, as well as the development of a restorative course for incoming 9th grade students that are struggling in reading. Math, the standards are also being revised and updated in math. Elementary will be engaged with our Into Math curriculum year 3, at the middle school year 2, and at the high school, specifically in Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry, it will be year 2. In addition to our supplemental math work, we'll be adding for grades 3 through 5 reflex and fracs as students work on their math fluency. in addition to the development of a new course. It's an integrated math course which takes Algebra 1 and portions of geometry, and over a 2-year period, our students are able to engage in project-based learning in more explicit content. And so that will also be introduced this year to be able to tackle some of our 9th grade math challenges. In the areas of STEM, we're currently, our K through 5 program, which is heavily dependent on mystery science, will be up for review this year, which will be led by the curriculum team as well as school-based staff, so that we can better align with the new model curriculum framework that was introduced in 2023. And so we wanted to take our time with this, and so we'll be engaging in that work this year. We will also continue to support Ed Puzzle at the middle and the high school level. This is a video content management system that helps educators use videos and standards aligned lessons in a more engaging way, and they're able to actually share solid, high-quality lesson plans with each other. In terms of humanities, there are a few things that we are focused on. And so our middle school program in the humanities or world language is really focused on Spanish culture and communication. And so there will be curriculum updates from grades 6 through 8 this year. In addition to maintaining our French, German, and Spanish programs, there will be curriculum updates in German 3 and 4, as well as a new curriculum adoption for Spanish grades 9 through 12. And then in social studies at the elementary level, Brain Pop is one of the dominant programs. And so we will also be engaging with our educators and our curriculum team new programming for the 25-26 school year related to the teaching of social studies and history at the elementary level. In addition to a new course that's being offered, Advanced Placement African American Studies, which includes curriculum, instructional materials, and then some pretty interesting field trips this year. And so we're extremely excited about that. In terms of professional development is broken up in a few different ways. Some it's broken up by grade band, others it's broken up by content area. And so we want to make sure that we have robust professional development and support for our educators. At the preschool level, we will continue with creative curriculum. We have been utilizing their core program. We will be investing in their supplemental program as well, because there are some standards that have changed and some concepts that have now been introduced at preschool, and we want to make sure that our students at their beginning stages of their education are appropriately prepared. We're also looking at behavioral support with Handle with Care at the preschool level. And then in addition to a range of elementary professional development, specifically looking at our professional learning community support, SEL and behavioral support, de-escalation and crisis prevention, Equity Foundation training for all new faculty, as well as foundational equity training for office personnel and instructional assistants. And then Equity Council support, which happens at the school-based level for each campus. In addition to supporting year 3 of our Ed Leadership Academy cohort, we believe that it's important for us to build leadership from within, and so we'll be engaging in that. In addition to using our Title I funds to support targeted after-school programming in math and literacy, as well as our Title II funding to support additional professional development and training based on what the content experts say that they need. And so at the high school level, all of those things also hold true, in addition to increasing MTSS support, specifically at the secondary level, with the addition of a second MTSS coach. Also making sure that with our students who have moved beyond their bridge, that our non-ESL classrooms also have sheltered English instruction to better engage students who are not yet fully English proficient. In addition to Equity Council support at the middle and the high school level, and then a new project that we're extremely excited about, given the discussions that we've had within our community for the last several months. We've gone and we've talked to some of our students, and the recommendation from students is that in order to change culture and climate on campus, specifically when you're working with teenagers, they want to be a part of that change. And so we believe that it's extremely important that we elevate student voice, and so starting this summer, We're going to be identifying a core group of young people as well as educators to go through training, and they'll be engaged in an action research project focused on collecting data, looking at the data, making recommendations and a plan to be able to move their school forward in a very positive way. And so that work will start in August and carry us into the 24-25 school year. And so in terms of student support, I just want to give a quick shout out and kudos. We have a phenomenal special services team. We support roughly 360 students with IEPs across all 9 of our campuses, and it's extremely important that we continue to refine those processes. We brought in an outside entity last year to do a special review to confirm what we already know, is that we have a high quality program and we are ready, willing, and able to begin shifting what we do to really drill down and focus on shifting towards a more inclusive model. And so our special services, special education program includes self-contained, resource, pull-out replacement, supplemental in-class support, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech pathology, behavioral support, and ongoing counseling. And so we also believe that it's important to continue to support social, emotional, and mental health services. And so K through 12, between our SEL programs, counseling, behavioral support, academic intervention, all of those services will be maintained. In addition to making sure that we have K through 12 nursing support, access to a certified athletic trainer for our student athletes, as well as having a consulting physician of record to be able to fill in the gaps so that our students are both healthy mentally and physically. In addition to continuing with our partnership for Safe Routes to Schools, which was identified during the referendum discussions. And so we don't have to wait until September of 2027 to start talking about Safe Routes to Schools. We've already begun and engaged in that work now, and we'll continue to engage in that work to make sure that every student in our community has a safe route to the campus in which they receive services. Technology support, we are reorganizing our technology team in order to improve customer service as well as shorten the response time for technical assistance in our schools. We're going to continue with our Google Workspace for Education, so Google Classrooms are the learning management system that we use across our schools. We're continuing with our one-to-one computing initiative, and so annual cycles of Chromebook replenishment and purchases, in addition to making sure that we are staying ahead of the curve in terms of network security and data protection for both students and staff. And when we talk about a continuity of service, which was the goal, to the highest degree possible, how do we maintain levels of service that our students need? And so first, we're looking at a new learning schedule for elementary, middle, and high, but for this slide, we're talking about elementary. And so we believe that in exchange for removing all of the non-contractual early release days for POCs, providing our educators protected time to be able to do their work was vital if we're going to be able to fundamentally shift to address the rigor given the challenges that we face and where our data is leading us. And so our homerooms will be maintained at our current levels. Specials will also be maintained. Music, art, PE, world language, gifted and talented. Instrumental lessons will also be maintained. We will have behavioral support. Small group instruction will be modified based on the data and student need, as well as Tier 2 and Tier 3 academic interventions will also be modified based on student needs. At the elementary level, students will have access to a full range of counseling services, as well as continuing for us to refine our SEL program. And so the middle school, currently the secondary team, they're working on a tremendous challenge. And so the challenge is, how do you develop a schedule that understands the nuance that is developmentally appropriate for middle school students and high school students? And so they will continue to work on this to make sure that students get what they need both at the middle school as well as the high school level through the utilization of time. And so we also wanted to talk about, we were very fortunate to have a robust cadre of career pathways. And so these are sequential trajectories of learning that students choose in the areas of band, orchestra, chorus, art, technology design, iCubed, which is a STEM project-based learning, and then a host of other electives that will also be offered for our students based on student demand. And so when we move to the high school, it's also important that high school teachers as well as middle school and elementary also have protected time that is not directed for them. And so allowing educators space and time every single day to be able to do this extremely important work above and beyond their normal prep time. And so we're going to include that in this upcoming school year. And so we also just wanted to highlight the cadre of advanced placement courses and dual credit college credit bearing courses at our high school. And so students have a wide array of opportunities for them to pursue whatever their post-secondary plans are. And so we want to continue to make sure that students have choices. And so the high school also has a wide range of career pathway options in addition to electives: band, orchestra, chorus, art, graphic design, television production, audio production, and engineering, introduction to engineering, computer science, cybersecurity, and networking. And so students have a range of options based on what they are interested in. And so in addition, we also, in the belief of a well-rounded education, that cannot be achieved without access to extracurricular activities. So student clubs, so middle school and high school will have a wide range of clubs. We were very fortunate to hear one of the elementary clubs this evening with the accordion club, but at the middle school and high school, it goes much deeper and far more expansive in terms of the types of experiences that young people desire to participate in addition to robust fall, winter, and spring sports, both junior varsity and varsity, boys and girls. And so we want to make sure that there are things for our young people to participate in should they so choose. And so of note, one of the sports that is shifting from a club to a sport pending enrollment numbers is flag football. And so we received last year a grant from the NFL, us and many other high schools across the country, to begin expanding flag football for young women. We had teams that participated in a organized club, and our hope is that we have enough participation in the spring to actually have a team that would become an official sport in the state of New Jersey this upcoming school year. And so we've been talking about the need for community advocacy. And so first, I would just like to publicly thank all of the community members since March that have been communicating and advocating for resources at the state level. We appreciate it. And we believe that as a community, it's extremely important that we continue to put the pressure on the state to do a better job of making sure that we have a fair funding formula for all the students in the state of New Jersey. And so this presentation will be sent out and made on our district website tomorrow. And so the links are live, and so any of the community members that have a desire to communicate with our state representatives, our Department of Education, and the Governor's Office, we encourage you to do so. And that concludes the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McDowell. That was a lot of information given to us all at once. So wanted to ask what would be the best way or kind of a timeline for how both the board and the community can be expecting maybe more detailed information on, let's say, things like their children's schedules or things that would be offered next year for the next school year, things like that.
So I would ask for the community's patience, and so given the the sophisticated nature of trying to balance what young people have requested with the resources that are available, schools will need time in order to be able to speak with specificity. And so the goal is before the end of the school year is to have all of that shored up in terms of new schedules, complete opportunities. And so we know that at a high level, all of the core academic courses that we have traditionally offered, as well as our pathways, will be offered. Electives are always based on student requests. And so the schools are actively engaged in that process, and student requests tends to drive much of those discussions. But the actual schedule itself, students will know before they go home for the summer what they will be taking, and the practice has been for students to actually receive their physical schedule in hand August 15th. And so, but students will know before they go home for the summer of what, but the when, that will come in the form of their formal schedule, which will be located in Genesis on August 15th.
And teachers will also be aware of will they go home for the summer knowing what they will be teaching for the following year?
That's the
That's the plan.
expectation. That's the expectation.
Okay. So thank you very much. Obviously, lots more to come on that. So we move to section 4, Committee of the Whole. Motion to enter Committee of the Whole.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ms. Coleman is going to take some time. There have been some recent legislation that has passed that she is going to explain for us what that means and the impact it has on us.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. I know we met last Monday. Oakland's meeting was Tuesday night, and their committees, and as we were going through the legislation, as we were talking, it was actively changing. But last Wednesday, the governor did sign some measures, so I thank everybody for their help with getting the governor's attention. So there's good news and bad news. The good news is we got his attention. What made it very unusual is that he appropriated an additional $44.7 million for education as a result of all the school districts screaming. So it's, if you had the money, why didn't you just do that in the first place? But whatever. So, we take. So I'm still waiting to get a lot of guidance back from Trenton, but in the case of Collingswood, it's $18,894. Not a whole heck of a lot. We got about 44.7% back of what they cut, and they only cut about $42,000, so that's the number. The original bill, as written, said it would be stabilization aid, and we would have to do a grant and then do a plan. It's automatic state aid. We don't have to do a grant, but I do believe we, most likely in the month of June, we're going to have to reapprove the budget. They're going to have to open up all the budgets for all the school districts so that we can allocate the state aid as revenue and then pick an expenditure account. What's also written in the law is because he did this, it's now incumbent upon the commissioner, so lucky us, another audit, but we're going to have to somehow track the expenditures, where they went and for what purposes they were used for all of the school districts, because the commissioner is going to have to submit a report back to the governor. So that was the first bill. So $18,000, I already know where I'm putting it, probably in special ed or transportation, because those lines are always very hard to budget for. But again, I'll talk to the finance committee. And again, whatever we do, most likely, the way the law's written, we would have to do something by July 5th. So probably at the June board meeting, I'll be presenting something. They did send a spreadsheet out. We would have to basically re-enter the last 2 years of budget information into an Excel spreadsheet, and then basically tell them how we're going to spend the money and then resubmit and do the budget software by July 5th. So not a problem, but so that's the first bill. The second one, which I really thought had promise, and then when I really read it, I was like, kind of interesting. So I'm still digging on this one. The second bill basically gave school districts the leeway to increase your 2% tax cap if you lost state aid between the years of 2021 and 2025. Still don't know why he picked 2021. The only thing I can figure, and again, I haven't gone to a state meeting since this happened, is when they ran the state aid formula this year, they used the income for all the towns, they used 2021. But unfortunately, for both Collingswood and Oak Lynn, our aid did not go down between the years of 2021 and 2025. So we would not be eligible because we didn't go the wrong way. Now, year to year, yes, but they arbitrarily picked 2021. So in 2021, Collingswood was about 11 million in state aid. No, we're 11 million now, we're about 10.6 back in 2021.
So they're not looking for the progression, it's just literally those 2 years?
Those 2 years, do the math. If you went negative between those 2 years, then you would be eligible to increase your taxes up to 9.99% of the difference. Again, I keep checking in the budget software just to make sure I didn't read the law right, because they said they were going to update it on our tax cap sheet. It's a part of the budget software, basically, where the taxes are generated. I was thinking maybe I read it wrong, but nothing's popping out for either district. So for Collingswood, it's $18,000. And more to come, but I still think we need to advocate and scream, because everybody screams so loudly, found $44 million. So I think we still need to scream. It's highly unusual that we've already set the tax rate. We've already signed with the borough, so now all these towns, it's not, our taxes are staying the same, but for those towns that do have that difference, and they can go back to their towns, I guess they're gonna all have to recertify their taxes, I suppose. And I guess that's what Trenton's trying to figure out right now. But that doesn't affect us.
And it doesn't affect districts like us where it's a structural issue, not a,
No.
you know, like the example that a lot of people use, right, is Barrington, where the one person moved in and that dropped them for just that 1 year. Ours has been a structural issue.
Correct,
many,
because
many
the
years.
2% just doesn't generate an awful lot
Right.
here, and our costs are going up. So we really need movement on the 2% and the ability to ask our taxpayers, because right now, the way the law's written, I can't ask unless it's something brand new and it's something that's not required for an education. So basically, you're saying I can't ask.
So when we're advocating to the state, what are we now saying?
I really think the 2% needs to keep up with the cost of living at a minimum. If they're publishing the cost of living adjustments and the CPI that busing contractors can apply to contracts with school districts, which this year was like 5.8, almost 6%, but you're capping me at 2%, which that 2% isn't even a half of my total budget, so I'm really capped at like less than 1%. So mathematically, it just doesn't work anymore, and they need to acknowledge that. I mean, it's been capped at 2% since Governor Christie, so I think it's now I'm all about, you know, spending appropriately and watching what you spend and not overtaxing, but, you know, when the gap between your town's ability to pay and what we're allowed to ask for is millions of dollars, and I'm cutting millions of dollars, there's something wrong. There's something wrong. So that's my argument with the way the state has this structured right now.
Because, am I correct in this, that the number that the state told us that we could conceivably generate from the tax base in our town is, I don't remember what that number was, but it is a couple of $1 million difference from what we're actually allowed to collect. Is that correct?
Yes.
Somebody, what?
It's about $6 million.
It's about $6 million, right?
Yeah.
So the state is
Our
looking.
local fair share
is-
versus what I'm allowed to ask for locally.
because this was fairly eye-opening to me, who's admittedly not a math person, that the state is looking and seeing, oh, the town of Collingswood could collect $6 million more in taxes, or from their tax base, and then, I don't know, in their own world thinking we're doing it, even though they know we're not, and then what
They-
we actually get.
That's 100% true. And they know we're not, because part of the budget software, it spits out your status as a district as far as adequacy, and again, it's another term that they use, whether you're over adequate or under adequate, and we are so below the number they determined for adequacy, meaning the funds needed to provide an adequate education with all the mandates that they set. We're below that number because I can't raise it enough
Yeah.
to get there. I'm chasing it every year. I'm chasing that number.
Yeah.
So $18,000, it's something. not great. And then in June, most likely, I'll probably have to just reapprove the total budget by increasing it by that $18,000, and I'll have all the supporting documentation, obviously, presented at that time. Okay?
Beth Ann, can you explain to everybody what the fair share means? Like, what number does that represent of our community? Is it income? Is it?
It's partly, it's
estate?
income. Again, last year, I feel like I need like a master's degree in calculus or something, but it's like 9 pages of blah, blah, blah calculations, but they used the 2021 income, so the value of everybody's W-2s in town, like your state tax returns that you submit, but then they also used the 2023, why not the same year, I don't know, but they used the 2023 property values when they ran the funding formula.
I do not understand.
We were on calls with lawmakers who actually signed this legislation, and they did not understand. And I explained it like a couple times, and I had other BAs on the phone, and they're like, no, that's exactly what they did, and they didn't get it either, so don't feel bad. It doesn't add, I don't think it's meant to add up purposely, which is why I've asked that people like us are in the room when they're drafting the next funding formula.
When, speaking of that, this current funding formula is, how old is the current funding formula? Do you know, 10, 15 years?
08 it came in, something like that, yeah.
So the cost of educating a child from then to now not accurately being represented in the funding formula, it is currently now statutorily has to be looked at again.
I agree. Every year they publish the comparative spending guide, right, where they literally say what the total cost it is to educate a child. Statewide, then they break it out by region, north, central, south, and they break it out by district type, like K-12 or K-8. And I don't remember the number, but I think it's well over $17,000 or $18,000. I think it's closer to like $22,000, $23,000. The state only funds per pupil, I think it's $13,181. But because we're in South Jersey, we get less than that. So go figure that. They apply a geographic cost index. So because we're not North Jersey, they take the $13,000 per pupil, which we know we spend more because we just do more because they tell us to do more. And then we get less than that. So we get maybe 12 something because we're South Jersey. So yeah, it's a frustrating process. And I share everybody's frustration because every spring my head wants to explode. It makes zero sense. We do the best to make sense of it, which is why like my state association has been screaming to get in the room. Like at least if you're going to publish a comparative spending guide that says what it costs to educate the children in New Jersey by geographic region, then fund it that way. It just makes sense, but they don't. And my guess is they don't have the money because it would obviously cost a lot more.
Beth Ann, my mind also does not work mathy, so I just want to make sure I understand. So 22,000 to educate, and I know you've explained this to me, but my brain just cannot handle it. Okay, 22,000 to educate a child. The state funds 13,000, but we get less than that. You take the total number of students in our district, and you've said that the special education students cost even more than that, correct? Then you total it, you subtract the amount that we get from the state. The difference is our budget, but then you can only ask for 2%. So that
Yes.
So that creates a deficit. That's what you're saying?
Yes, in a nutshell. And we do get state aid in the areas of transportation, which has not been fully funded ever. And we all know the cost of transportation right now. And they also fund in the areas of special ed, but they don't fully fund special ed either. They also have another formula, on how they determine how much they fund for those two items also.
Thank you.
Hope I didn't confuse everybody.
No,
but-
thank you for taking us through all of that again.
No,
I think
it's-
it's important to just keep going through it because it's,
And yeah, my frustration, if you
okay.
had the 44 million, why didn't they just leave us alone, right? So,
and as you said, if they're going to publish what it costs to educate a student, then, yeah, then we should have that ability to take that. So like we said, I guess the updated version of us lobbying our legislators is more about fair share and funding formula, because that's the next step, and that's looking forward to next school year and next year's budget. Okay, thank you for all of that. Can I get a motion to exit committee of the whole?
Moved.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to section 5, future dates and miscellaneous information, has more PTA end of year things, as well as all of the promotion ceremonies for elementary, middle, and then graduation being on June 17th.
And I did see that the board meeting didn't make it on June 24th.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't. It stops at the 18th. So
Yeah,
June
so-
24th is the last date that should have been on
Correct.
there, here at 6:30. Section 6, motion to approve the minutes of the May 13th special board meeting.
So moved.
And a second. All in, roll call? All in favor?
Aye.
This brings us to our first opportunity for public comment. The purpose for this public comment section is to discuss items listed on the agenda. Additional, more general comments may be made later in the meeting. The public is reminded to resolve all concerns and complaints should first go through appropriate staff members and administrators. The intent of public comment is to give the community the opportunity to provide feedback to the board. We will be actively listening and taking notes so that we can take all that is being said into consideration. If appropriate, clarifying comments may be made at the end of the public comment section. For more detailed responses to concerns, communication may go out later in the week by the appropriate staff members or administrators, or be discussed by the board during future committee meetings. Members of the public are welcome to speak and expected to do so with the utmost sensitivity for everyone in attendance. In fairness to all who wish to speak, there's a 3-minute time limit per person, and Ms. Coleman has her timer ready. Please remember to come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
She's just holding the sign for me. Is that okay? This is my friend Brianna.
Yes. Does everybody mind waiting 2 more minutes to let Trey give his
I'm so sorry.
his report? That's
Very
my fault.
impulsive.
Thank
No,
you,
it's our
Kelly.
bad.
I forgot
It's
to
okay.
let him go first.
It's all good.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Kelly. So we're gonna jump to, I think it's section 9 usually, the student report, just in case Trey has things he's got to do. Go ahead.
Well, I'll purposefully keep this short. Today, in particular, high school students visited the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. after having seen a presentation on the life of a teenage Holocaust survivor from her daughter in America today. Since there hasn't been much time since the last few board meetings, there hasn't been a lot of student developments for me to comment on, and I'll be aware of everybody's time here, and that's all for me today.
Thank you very much, Trey, and that sounds like quite an amazing experience that those students got. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you to everyone that was coming up to speak for giving him the time. Back to public comment.
All right, Anna, you're up.
Wait, am I supposed to leave this microphone here, or can I hold it? Okay. My name is Anna Tack, and I am a second grade teacher within this district. I want to address a significant concern regarding the approach taken by our superintendent in addressing diversity and inclusion within our schools. I am a first-generation kid. My mom grew up in Cambodia, and she was there during the genocide. She survived it. My dad is Cambodian, and he was born in Vietnam and fought in the Vietnam War, and he was able to make it here. I have a deep understanding of the challenges faced by many of our students, particularly those who lack parental support due to language barriers, cultural barriers, busy parents, or those who just didn't know how to work the school system. This personal experience is one of the reasons I became a teacher. I strive to provide the support and understanding that I needed when I was a student. I grew up and still live in Pennsauken, and I loved growing up there because I was exposed to so many different cultures, and I respect them. Growing up, I was taught to be silent, but now I speak not because I am brave, as some might describe, but because I'm tired. I'm tired of seeing the same issues persist without meaningful action. A few years ago, there was an equity committee that was established, brought together parents, teachers, principals from each school. The superintendent and the board president addressed I should say superintendent at the time, right, to address diversity issues and promote inclusion. This committee highlighted that diversity is an umbrella and we encompass a wide range of issues. Everyone dedicated their time and effort to help their kids thrive. We met once, maybe twice a month on school nights and stayed late. I was proud to be part of this group. It took us months to realize there are different issues at the elementary, middle, and high school level, and we all worked together, shared our concerns and possible solutions. However, when our new superintendent was hired, he dismantled this committee and created a DEI committee. While I respect the intention, I'm concerned that we have not seen meaningful progress in addressing racial issues. I'm not surprised. Last year, I attended a meeting labeled as Talent and Recruitment to help minorities diversify the staff. To my surprise, there were only Asian teachers, and we were asked why we became teachers. That is a very personal question. You can see from my poster. This stark contrast in seeing my colleagues who were also Asian but didn't experience the same things as me was disheartening. I was clearly upset. There was no follow-up. It's been a year. So this experience highlights a critical issue. Grouping individuals solely based on race without acknowledging their unique backgrounds and experiences is not only insensitive, but also counterproductive. I'm concerned that the superintendent couldn't recognize the generational trauma that relates to some cultures and asked us to share our experiences that led us to become teachers without being mindful. As someone who is dedicated to fostering inclusivity and understanding, I'm troubled by this oversight. I thought I was being recruited to be part of the DEI committee, I shouldn't have to beg, due to my openness in sharing how I overcame my trauma and how I'm positively impacting my students. However, it's been a year since that meeting and I feel like I was listened to, but then ignored. I urge the board to consider reinstating the old equity committee or build a bridge.
Thank you,
and
Ms.
inviting those who sign in at every meeting to participate again. Our students deserve it.
Rosemary Farrow. I live at 1007 Stokes Avenue in Collingswood. I spoke last week, but I'll reintroduce myself again. I am the mother of 3 sons and the grandmother of 9 children, 6 of whom attend Collingswood Public Schools. I spoke last week because I have a concern as not only a taxpayer, but most importantly, as a grandmother of those children who are attending the schools about the current budget cuts and the cut of the 16 point, whatever that decimal was, of from the classrooms, instructional positions, at the very time that it appears that the Collingswood Public Schools have extended their administrative, especially district administrative positions. I spoke about those salaries. I compared them to Washington Township, where I had been an educator for many years, retired as principal of the high school. And again, I just want to say one more time, I think it may have been an exercise in futility, but I think it's important to reiterate that even though the state is only giving a little bit of money back, it sounds as if there will be a reassessment of the budget priorities. And I ask once again that we be looking at that, you as a board and of course the entire district administrative staff be looking at the priorities. If we're not putting the priority in the classroom, we are damaging our students. We are taking something from them that is so important. And if we have what appear, and I can only say by my experience, appear to be an overinflated number of administrators, especially at the district level, with very high salaries, specifically looking at the agenda tonight that is approving a district business administrator at $100,000. These are things of concern, and I just appeal to you as a board to continue to look at these and to recognize that, again, as a taxpayer, as that grandmother, as that former educator, that I appeal to you to please try to find ways to put more of that instructional staff back into the classroom. And I also just want to reference one other item I noticed on the board, again, I point to this, I think it's an example of questionable expenditures, and it's the item, excuse me, 11, is it 11.14, the appointment of a special investigator to review the district processes and procedures as they relate to HIB incidences. I know the district has been struggling, specifically at the high school in regard to incidents like that, but again, I know as an administrator, I was fully trained in all HIB policies. I assume that all of your administrators are fully trained, and I wonder why
Thank you,
the
Ms.
district
Farah.
doesn't have the personnel to not have to get a special lawyer investigator. Thank you.
Hello, Rebecca Finkel, 916 Park Ave. Like a lot of you, I've spent the last few weeks reflecting on the racist bullying happening in our community, and I realize that there really isn't a place where parents, teachers, students, and administration can effectively communicate with each other. I'm grateful for the ability to address you here and for my freedom to discuss school-related issues online without it affecting my employment. But I think we need to establish additional space for back-and-forth discussion on this topic. Any viable solution to our current crisis will require all of these stakeholders to be in the same room, identifying the problems and discussing what they believe can be helpful solutions. If anything is going to move forward, it has to be collaborative. Collaboration requires trust, and building that trust is a slow process. I know that there are more direct ways to address inequities in schools, such as discipline disparities and achievement gaps. Those should still happen. Action and accountability are crucial in combating racism, but so is creating safe spaces that allow people to share their experiences. Right now, both parents and teachers are afraid to speak up because they worry about how it could affect their relationships with each other, or worse, their relationships with students. I heard that there was an equity committee attended by teachers and parents before the pandemic. I would love to learn more about this. Who attended, what did they learn, and what about that group made them feel safe to speak? I recently started working in higher education, where I learned the true meaning of the idea that committees are where ideas go to die. But I've also seen some extraordinary things result from committees. It's a slower process, but what comes out of it is valuable. There are also methods to facilitate this kind of collaborative work, such as group model building. With the amount of talent and expertise in this community, I'm sure that we can facilitate this. I hope that you will also consider speaking to former equity committee members to get their insight on how to start building bridges between community members. Thank you.
Gretchen Kalecki, 920 Grand Avenue. During the presentation from the superintendent, there were slides showing different extracurricular activities going forward. I may have missed it. I don't know if you can answer this back, but I didn't notice theater arts on the slides. Have theater arts been cut as something for middle school and high school, or did I just miss that line on your slide? Okay, all right. The other thing, in the budget, I do believe that we are doing a shared service for public relations. I don't know what the exact term for, with Haddon Township. Are we taking advantage of everything that they offer us? Are we communicating with them? Because I don't know if you've seen Haddon Township's referendum video and their PR outreaches. They were phenomenal, very educational, helped get the word out to all levels of citizens. And I'm just wondering, are there going to be more referendum meetings, and have the ones for the senior citizens been scheduled yet?
Wayne Rossi, 114 East Palmer Ave. So I've also heard, I know Dr. McDowell had an email last week about further unfortunate racial bias incidents in the schools. And it's really disturbing to continue to see this. And I feel like right now, first of all, I don't know if enough students feel like this is enough of a present issue, if there's some need for some kind of action that would actually like sort of serve as like a wake up that the things that have been going on are simply unacceptable. I did think that a lot of the items specifically in Dr. McDowell's presentation today seemed like positive things. My biggest current worries are that a lot of the things that are being brought up are teachers who are, it's like it's starting with the people who already are in a good position as far as understanding issues. Like I feel like a lot of like that initial phase has been voluntary, and that really bringing it up to the point where every teacher can have the hard discussions about race in their classroom and with their students is really important. And sort of that idea of not just bringing along the people who are sort of out front, but making sure that everyone is involved in this effort, it really to me is a critical part of seeing this through. And the last thing I wanted to say is I've heard from a couple teachers and administrators that there's not necessarily the amount of understanding that like some people have alleged that is going on. And I think that that's something where communication and openness and being, I understand that there's a lot of privacy concerns, but making sure that everyone is engaged and open, and I think some kind of accountability type group that people people are able to join into would be a really good way of making sure that that happens, where different staff are able to talk and share information and understand what the environment is better, because there's a lot of turning around that needs to be done. Thank you.
Leah Foreman, 501 South Vineyard Boulevard. I have a question about the tuition for students that are leaving the district. If we are only getting like $12,000 from the state, are we responsible for then filling the gap of the full tuition amount? Oh boy, okay. No, that was mostly my question. But thank you, that's it. Thanks so much.
I'm Alexandra Guido-Smith, 311 Lakeview Drive. I just want to comment on last Thursday, the Amplifying Black and Brown Voices panel that the board supported along with the borough, and I think it was hard for a lot of people. I was really encouraged by the turnout. I saw neighbors, I saw people I didn't know, I saw people I just passed, in the street. I saw children, I saw families, and I was encouraged to see that there were so many people that were putting themselves in a room to hear stories that maybe that they wouldn't have otherwise. And I'm hopeful that that can be built upon. So I thank you for supporting that kind of work, and I hope to see more of that in the future. I'm also really pleased to see, I wish that the Science of Reading people that had talked to you a number of times, that they were here, because like home runs across the board. I love that you have Dibbles as a universal screener. I love
CA is finally for mediation. While awaiting the assignment of a mediator, those staff members who were recognized as staff members of the year. So, Morgan Lear, especially for Finally, the CEA would also like to acknowledge and thank those teachers whose contracts were not renewed for the 2024-25 school year. Thank you, Madison Bryant, Jessica Stiglitz-Creamer,
Justin Cordray, Megan Brogan, Jacqueline Petito, Alyssa Hetrick, Gabrielle Lynch, Alexis Bradarina, Ruth Elias, Megan Switch, Kelly Amato, Scott Lachlan, Shannon Caprero, Anthony LeLeonis, Aaron Daly, Erica Jacobson, and Matthew Twardziak. For working tirelessly to support our students, you will be missed, and we wish you well in your new positions next year.
Hi, my name is Angela Keck. I have been a learning acceleration specialist for the last 11 years at Mark Newby Elementary. Based on the budget investment presentation provided tonight, I think we as a community need more clarity and practical explanation of the plan. You mentioned that academic supports would be maintained, but as I reported last week, we are moving from 17 teachers in the role of learning acceleration and MTSS coach to 7 teachers. Roughly, as our group, our caseload is about 439 interventions a day. These interventions are being implemented individually and in small group. That number is not students, but our number of interventions. I am still compiling data for the entire district, but in terms of Mark Newby, 42% of our students are in some sort of academic support service with varying levels of need. With the proposed reorganization of LAS, I'm deeply concerned that only the neediest children will receive help. We have always took pride in meeting the needs of the neediest, as well as those who just needed that temporary push to get back onto grade level. With this reorganization and our current class sizes, I am worried that differentiation will not be enough to support these students. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone for getting up to speak. Wanted to make a few, I was just trying to make some notes here, a few clarifying comments based on public comment. The first being, I believe for extracurriculars, if I was understanding that slide, it simply was just talking about sports. I don't know that that means, I'm not under the impression that means that other extracurriculars are not in, like it didn't list all the clubs or everything either, right? So all of those things are being offered, it just, that particular slide was highlighting sports.
Correct.
Okay, so we can expect theater, music, various clubs that have been offered in the past to be there next year, provided that we have staff members who want to lead those. Would that be right?
So the schools are going to identify what students are requesting in terms of the clubs, and they're going to offer a wide range of clubs and extracurricular activities as they do every single year. And so, I mean, this year they introduced a cadre of new clubs based on student interest, and so next year will be very similar.
And then a question about the kind of communication and outreach for the referendum. That information or future dates will be coming out shortly. The big push, and this is just kind of the way it goes for any referendum, usually comes much closer to the actual voting date because folks have they want all that information right before they vote. So that's something to look for throughout the summer and moving into the fall. And then could you please, Dr. McDowell, speak to why the Teachers of the Year are not being acknowledged at this particular meeting?
So it was discussed with our association leader that given the time of the year, given the tone and tenor, we did not want to come off as being insensitive or tone deaf to the loss that we were all facing. And so what was explained at that time was that a larger reception and celebration kicking off the beginning of the year with invitations for recipients and their families. Small celebrations took place in our schools over the last week and a half, broken down by department, but we felt that it would be more important for us to pause and then celebrate the way that we have in years past, more appropriately at the beginning of the school year, given some of the challenges that we face right now. And so that was what was explained to the leadership, and so that's the decision that we decided to make in order to honor and celebrate folks properly.
Thank you. Moving on to Section 8, the Superintendent's report. Dr. McDowell will present.
I did
Sorry,
answer it.
I think-
I nodded
oh,
to her.
sorry, okay,
Yeah,
got
no,
it.
I nodded.
Section 8.01 is the attached enrollment report. April of 2023 is 2,269. April of 2024 is 2,256. That's attached. 8.02, 03, and 04 are the safety drill, suspension, and anti-bullying report. Those are all attached. And just have one short announcement that I wanted to make is that on Wednesday, May 15th, students from Pause TV, Panther Films, and Panther Productions represented Collingswood High School at the 2024 Regional Student Mid-Atlantic Emmy Award Ceremony. The event was hosted by the National Academy of Television, Art, and Sciences Philadelphia chapter and took place at Temple University. Alongside the students was the advisor, Ms. Harmono, and Mrs. Seeley from Collingswood Middle School, who graciously volunteered to chaperone. Our television students from across the region, including New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware, competed in categories including news, sports, documentary, editing, and talent. And so every year, students across the region submit their very best video packages, and it's a very highly selective judged competition. And so the day started off with a welcoming ceremony where students participated in meet and greets with Fox News, sports anchors, CBS 3 photojournalists, as well as professors at the Temple's Klein School of Media. Students were also given tours of the Temple University campus and their studios. And so as competitive as the Mid-Atlantic Emmy Awards are, Collingswood High School students brought home 5 nominations. So congratulations to senior Charlie Gisa, seniors Enzo DeMasi, Lydia Anderson, Jacob Edgerton, junior Piper Wright, and sophomore Raina Barr on their nominations. And senior Amelia Traub brought home the Emmy Award for the talent category. And so we would like to congratulate and thank all of the volunteers, the advisors, the folks that helped to make our Pause TV what it is. All of the nominated and winning videos will be posted on the Pause TV news channel. And we wanted to make sure that we recognize our award-winning television and film production team. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McDowell. We had Section 9, the student reports by Mr. Ramsberg, a little bit before public comment. Moving on to Section 10, Business Administrator Board Secretary report. Ms. Coleman will present.
Item 10.01 are your monthly budget transfers for the month of April. And 10.02 is your financial statements, your cash report, treasurer's report, and cash flow analyses. 10.03 is your student activity cash report. 10.04 is your food service financial statements for the month of April. 10.05 are listing the purchase orders for the month of May. And a 10.06 is a listing of the warrants to be paid tomorrow morning upon approval. And I just want to, in item 11.11, I know we talked about it in finance, but we are hitting the 10% mark as far as transfers into transportation for increased costs and new routes. We had some kids move in that require busing. So I did send it to the county office. 10 days has expired and they haven't gotten back to me, so we can approve the transfer. I just want to explain to the board why that's on there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman. Moving on to section 11, the Buildings, Grounds, and Finance Committee. Mr. Craig will present.
The Finance, Buildings, and Grounds Committee reviews all financial statements, purchase orders, and warrants on a monthly basis. Committee also reviews and approves all contracts with outside service providers and oversees all maintenance and capital improvement projects district-wide. Thank you. Seeking approval for the following items, 11.2 to 11.9 is the Board Secretary's report as it was presented. 11.10 is the tax remittance schedule for the upcoming school year. 11.11 is that 10% transfer in transportation that Ms. Coleman just explained. 11.12 are school lunch prices for the following school year. 11.13 is a exception of a donation of backpacks from Jefferson Health Enterprise, which will be given out before next school year. We have about 250 backpacks, I think, right now over in the board office that have different supplies, books, and other things in there. So we thank
Most
Jefferson.
importantly, headphones.
Headphones, yes, and headphones. So thank you, Ms. Christina Carty, for organizing this and getting that for our students. 11.14 is special investigator, moving on the recommendation to bring in an attorney from Madden & Madden. This is reviewing comprehensive processes, procedures related to HIB incidents, in particular those dealing with racial bias, and ensuring that we have a third party looking those over. 11.15, use of facility NAACP of Camden County is going to be holding their decision day on Saturday, June 1st from 9 to 3 in the auditorium. Then 11.16 to 22, excuse me, are use of facilities for all the Collingswood rec programs over this summer, which I think went on sale today. So seeking approval for items 11.2 to 11.22.
So moved.
And a second? Questions or comments from board members? Actually, I wanted to ask Dr. McDowell, could you explain just a little bit more about the approval of the special investigator? What the scope of work will be for the beginning?
So given the historical nature of culture, climate, racial bias, and incidents that have happened in Collingswood, we believe that it's important that we have an independent third party come in and analyze what it is that we're doing. We clearly have a problem. And so part of getting to a solution is to first acknowledge that you have a problem. And so we need to better understand, is it a process issue? Is it a reporting issue? What are the systems and structures that need to be put in place in order to be able to make sure that students don't feel the way that they feel, and that we don't continue to have these incidents bubble up from time to time. And so one incident is too many, and we've had many incidents. And so we believe that we need independent, unbiased third party that is not encumbered or restricted due to positional authority to come in and ask the hard questions of our organization and hold us accountable to making sure that we do right by all of the students in our community. And so we're seeking first a document, a process, policy, and procedural review, and then they would then come in and make recommendations for what additional information is needed before they can make recommendations about solutions. And we believe that this is a solid first step in us getting some of the answers that we have been unable to uncover internally up to this point.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from board members?
Can you speak to the, I think you specifically said the scope of it. What kind of timeline are we looking at? When can we expect to get some information? Obviously, this does sound like a very good idea, but I think we need to be mindful of putting out that money and hiring, considering all of the budget situations that we have had recently. I think while I believe that state advocacy is very important, I think at the same time we have to recognize that unfortunately the situation is the way it is, and while we're waiting for state advocacy to hopefully work out additionally in our favor, we have to start making some decisions in terms of cost cutting. So would you be able to provide some information about, how long we're talking? Would we be able to hear some of the feedback after a short period of time before would we be voting to then continue the work? So if we could just kind of get a sense of the cost here.
I did interview the special investigator. I did ask him for a timeline. At this point, he's thinking could be probably several months. Because the first part, obviously, like Dr. McDowell said, would be a review of the process and procedures and basically the paperwork before the interviews start. But to be honest, we're getting in on summer, right? So for him to be able to go and talk to people over the summer, I don't know who's going to be available. So we just need to be realistic. So I'm thinking several months. I did ask for to him to keep me posted so I could bring back to the finance committee kind of like where we are in the process and how much longer and everything. And he said he would be keeping our board attorney abreast of where he is in the investigation, because we're trying to keep it like, we don't want to direct the work. We need to independently do his thing and then report back. So I did tell him that we need to be mindful of the money and just to report back where he is in the process so that I can let you know. And he was amenable to that, so.
Thank you for that. So when you say several months, you're not talking like, 40 hours a week. You're talking as he can schedule interviews with people?
Sorry, correct, yeah, he's a full-time attorney that does other things. This would be in addition to other stuff that he does, so he would have to find time in his schedule to do this. But the first part would be, he did submit to Dr. McDowell and I have yet to produce the documents because I haven't had time. We have a laundry list of things that he's asked us for, that pending his approval tonight, I'll have to sit with Fred, or Fred will have to sit with his administrative assistant, and we have to submit him. There's about 7 or 8 items that he would like, that he wants to review before he can start, I guess, putting his plan of attack in motion, if that makes sense.
It does, thank you. And would you just briefly be able to speak to, would our current solicitor, is he not considered unbiased? Is that the reason that we're going with somebody else?
I believe we reached out to our attorney on this one, and he recommended just so it's an independent person coming in, because the board, obviously the attorney represents the board's interest. We want somebody who is not employed or under contract with the board to do this, so that it's completely independent opinion. Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to, just a quick comment. I wanted to give Chris credit. Instead of, if we could think about it maybe instead of as an investigator and think about it as maybe like an audit, I think that's maybe a different way of looking at it, I think, and it's probably maybe a better way of looking at it. And also, I think it's also, I think it's really important work, and it's also beneficial to student work. So, like, I think that's also a way to think about it as well. I mean, I know obviously it's going to be work that's going to cost money, but it is also work that's going to directly benefit students. So,
any other questions or comments from board members?
I think it's important. I think it's just a difficult pill to swallow if we're spending money right now after laying off a bunch of people. I think we just need to be more mindful of what we're spending over time. Although I do think that this is important, I would support it at a certain time period. But given the budget crisis, I feel like we need to just be aware of what we're spending.
Any other questions or comments from board members? Go ahead.
For
Sorry.
item 11.
So everyone,
Is
when
it-
they're speaking, lean in like this. I think that was directed at you, Mary.
Is this good? We're good? Okay. For 11.11, sorry, I didn't catch it earlier. You're saying that we are, or it's tabled. We are voting for it, or?
The transfer?
Yes.
Yes, you are. I just
Okay.
wanted to explain why it was on there.
And also to clarify there too, I know transportation comes up a good bit, and to clarify, this is transportation that we are required by statute to pay for, correct? Like, this is not arbitrary, kind of like, oh, we decide to transport kids. This is like, we have to transport these kids by statute.
Correct. Believe it or not, we still have children moving in and signing up for school. I think in the last, I guess it was February, March, we had some people move in, so some of the kids did require transportation routes. So my budgeted line for transportation was exceeded about a month and a half earlier than anticipated.
And then speaking on the budget again, one of the things that I want to make sure wasn't lost in the discussions over the last couple weeks is that we did unfortunately also have to lose 3 administrators during this budget round. And so thank you also to them for their service. You know, I know also Washington Township is brought up a lot here, and I think elsewhere, I've heard it elsewhere as well, and comparing us to them. And I do want to make clear that in their 2024-25 budget, the per pupil total administrative cost that they're paying per pupil is $1,883. Right? So they're paying per pupil $1,883 for their administrators. Right? Here in Collingswood in 2024-25, we're paying $1,617 per pupil for total administrative costs. So again, you know, we are a smaller district, and I commend you, Ms. Coleman, for your work to make sure those costs stay low.
Any other questions or comments from board members? Roll call, please.
Mr. Chu?
Yes.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Mrs. Maya?
Yes, with the exception of, I think, 1114, the special investigator, I vote no.
Mrs. Mikulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Savarino?
Yes.
Mrs. Seltzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Sheridan Celia?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Tavy?
Yes.
Mr. Dilkus?
Yes.
Mrs. Caden?
Yes.
And everyone, you get, I'm sorry, to help everybody in the back, on your little speaker thingy.
Yeah, you can turn this
There's
side.
a volume. Make
Yeah,
sure it's
apologies,
pushed
everyone. We didn't
all the
realize
way up.
everyone couldn't hear.
I mean, obviously
all the
lean in, obviously, but you guys can hear me, right? Okay.
And
Yeah,
me
make
too?
sure the volume's like
Okay.
all the way up on the side, that's all. Thanks.
So moving on to section 12, the curriculum committee, Mr. Chu will present as loud as he can.
Hello? Hello. All right. The curriculum committee oversees and approves the district curriculum and assessment programs, as well as field trips, home instruction, co-curricular programs, and the school calendar. Item 12.02 are 2 elementary school field trips. Item 12.03 is a middle school field trip. 12.04 are some home instructions and out-of-district placements. 12.05 is additional home instruction and out-of-district placements. 12.06 is a specific out-of-district placement. 12.07 is approval for us one-on-one aid for us the senior trip. And then I'm seeking approval of items 12.02 through 12.07 tonight.
Motion to approve said items.
So moved.
And a second? Second. Questions or comments from board members?
I think that this might fit in here involving curriculum. So I know there's questions about how we're ensuring that some of our most needy of students are still, in terms of, I guess, academic supports, are still getting the supports that they need. And from our discussions, I just want to make sure that this is correct. From our discussions, it's that one of the things that we're doing is trying to focus the extra supports on the highest tiers of support and need, correct? The students who need the highest tiers of support.
Yes, so I think that any reasonable person would be able to argue is that all students deserve something. And so, but the financial reality is that we have to prioritize. And so we do believe that small group instruction is a very valuable tool. In our school system, we have depended very heavily on small group instruction for many, many years. And this upcoming year is no different. In a environment where the revenues simply aren't there, we have to make meaningful adjustments so the students get what they need. And so we're going to be working through our curriculum team, through our school-based teams, to identify how do we strike the appropriate balance so that students get what they need. And in terms of class size, homerooms are not changing. And so I think that we just want to clarify, homerooms are not changing. What is changing, or what is being modified, is small group instruction that is happening at pivotal times throughout the school day. And so that requires local educators working with the curriculum team in order to identify how we accomplish that, and what resources and what level of support will be provided to students. And so Looking at the data is important. Also looking at alternative models is important. But all of those discussions will be taking place over the next month.
Right, and I think something you mentioned there, looking at data is important. I know that,
So, sorry, I'm just realizing that this isn't what we're voting on, so we
Okay.
actually probably should not be talking about this. So, apologies that I didn't, I'm a little slow tonight, didn't catch that right away. Any other questions or comments about what is on the agenda for us to vote on about the curriculum committee tonight? Roll call, please.
Mr. Chu,
yes.
Mr. Craig,
Yes.
Mrs. Maya,
Yes.
Mrs. Mikulski,
Yes.
Mrs. Severino,
Yes.
Mrs. Seltzer,
Yes.
Mrs. Sharon Celia,
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman,
Yes.
Mr. Tavy,
Yes, with exceptions where required.
Mr. Dilkus,
Yes, except we're required to abstain.
Mrs. Caden.
Yes, moving on to section 13, the Personnel Committee, Ms. Sheridan Celia will present.
The Personnel Committee reviews all recommendations for teaching and staff employment, considers co-curricular employment, and considers all professional development opportunities for staff members. This evening, I am seeking approval of agenda items 13.02 through 13.30. The first two items, 13.02 and 13.03, are resignations. 13.04 and 13.05 are leaves of absence requests. 13.06 is the replacement for the resignation at 13.03 for a new payroll benefits clerk. 13.07 is the long-term substitute teacher appointment. 13.08 is also the appointment of a substitute shadow music teacher. And at 13.09 is the appointment of a middle school teacher. And 13.10, there's an amendment to the approval last new board meeting for tenured faculty to reflect the correct educational attainment for this individual. 13.11 is the elementary lunch supervisor. And 13.12 are the elementary school lunch aides for next year. There's a whole list of them. Elementary permanent substitutes appointments are at 13.13. 13.14 is the appointment of 4 middle school permanent substitutes. And the next agenda item, 13.15, is the appointment of 3 high school permanent substitutes. 13.16 is the appointment of 4 school security staff members. 13.17, we had approved several months ago submitting Ms. Coleman's contract to the county, and we finally got that back. They are very slow, so that's approval of her contract. 13.18 is the appointment of unaligned staff for the next school year. At 13.19, we have business service employees. There's a whole slew of them. They're all listed out there on the page. 13.20 is the student teaching stipend for 23-24 for 4 different students who have been in our district. 13.21 is to approve 2 staff members to receive Special Olympics Unified Champion School stipend. 13.22 is the to approve the athletic EDP stipend for the assistant coach for tennis. 13.23 is the approval of the 2024 summer ESY program. There are 3 people, or no, many more than that, 3 people. They go off to the next page, so we have a good robust summer program. 13.24 is the appointment of 2 individuals for the Sharp Summer Bridge program. 13.25, the Summer Wellness Program appointments. 13.26, approval of Summer Child Study Team and related services staff on an as-needed basis to get ready for our kids coming back in the fall. 13.27 is the summer counseling authorization of summer counseling hours. 13.28, also summer counseling hours at the high school. The early one was middle school. 13.29 is our annual approval of summer workers, both adults and our high school students who come out and do a really great job over the summer. And finally, 13.30 is 1 travel expense item I'm seeking approval for. So again, I'm seeking approval for agenda items 13.02 through 13.30 this evening.
Thank you. Motion to approve said items? And a second?
Second.
Questions or comments from board members? Roll call, please.
Mr. Chu,
Yes.
Mr. Craig,
Yes.
Mrs. Maya,
Yes.
Mrs. Mikulski,
Yes.
Mrs. Severino,
Yes, except for item 13.29 where I abstain.
Kate Seltzer,
Yes.
Mrs. Sheridan Celia,
I apologize. I do have to abstain from 13.29. Thank you for pointing that out.
I gotcha. All right, where'd I leave? Mrs. Sherman,
Yes.
Mr. Tavy,
Yes, with abstentions where required.
Mr. Dilkus,
Yes, except we're required to abstain.
Mrs. Caden.
Yes.
And I don't think I voted, but yes.
Listen. No. Yeah, thank you. It was mid-me calling your name and I never went back. I'm sorry.
Section 14, the Culture, Climate, and Policy Committee. Ms. Seltzer will present.
The Culture, Climate, and Policy Committee reviews all updates and changes of district policies and regulations. We had 2 policies up for a first read tonight. Both are contain fairly small changes, updating language, and in the case of 9323, making some small changes that are already reflected in our MOA. We also have several policies up for a second read. They're listed there. We discussed them last month. And so I am seeking approval for items 1402 and 1403.
Motion to approve said items? And a second? Questions or comments from board members? Roll call, please.
Mr. Chu,
Yes.
Mr. Craig,
Yes.
Mrs. Maya,
Yes.
Mrs. Mikulski,
Yes.
Mrs. Severino,
Yes.
Mrs. Seltzer,
Yes.
Mrs. Sheridan Celia,
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman,
Yes.
Mr. Tavy,
Yes.
Mr. Dilkus,
Yes.
Mrs. Caden.
Yes. Moving on to section 15, miscellaneous. 15.01 is move on the approval of the HIB report from April 2024 that we saw in the April 2024 board meeting. And then 15.02 are 2 job descriptions. One is a new job description of the early childhood principal pre-K to 3 position that is being filled internally. And then another is a revision to the job description for principals. So motion to approve items 15.01 and 15.02.
So moved.
And a second? Second. Questions or comments from board members?
Is that the pre-K principal job, is that through the grant? Yeah.
Yes, she,
Yes.
her mic wasn't working. Any other questions or comments?
And to clarify that is actually just the wording of the pre-existing pre-K position. Is that was the one, or that was the one that was removed and then now we're adding it back? Is that correct?
No.
No, not really.
So, in running of a preschool program that is independent in a separate building, per the grant, you have to have a principal of record. And so what we did was we dissolved the preschool supervisor role, and then we created a principal of early childhood which would supervise P through 3. That position will be pending approval from the board. That position will be posted tomorrow.
Right, and we dissolved that position last board meeting, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm sorry. So who did that job previously? So you said there was. I'm sorry. I don't mean who, but I mean so there was a supervisor and now it's going to be a principal. Okay, but completely grant funded. Okay.
No new positions on here that we're approving? Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Chu,
Yes.
Mr. Craig,
Yes.
Mrs. Maya,
Yes.
Mrs. Mikulski,
Yes.
Mrs. Severino,
Yes.
Mrs. Seltzer,
Yes.
Mrs. Sheridan Celia,
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman,
Yes.
Mr. Tavy,
We are at section 16, our next opportunity for public comment. This is more of a general opportunity for public comment. Everyone knows my spiel, I feel, by now. So in all fairness to wish to speak, there is a 3-minute time limit. Ms. Coleman has her timer ready. Please stand and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, everybody. Julia Salisi, 439 Haddon Ave. As someone who's been terribly saddened and really disappointed by the racial incidents we've been experiencing in our schools, I want to thank you for making sure that we're taking the appropriate action through hiring a special investigator to make sure that we know that our processes are being followed and reports are being done correctly. I can't underestimate how important it is, and what I've heard directly from a former student just last Thursday night about the impact that is having on our young people in our school buildings every day. And every single child deserves to feel safe and valued and to know that their concerns will be taken seriously. And so thank you to all of you who voted for that.
Robin Hogan, CEA President. I'm up here to clarify a few things that I understand were said while I was not in the room. Now teach me to leave the room. So, Dr. McDowell, I understand that you claim that we had a meeting and I approved of the change. What word did you use? I'm sorry. Oh, you can't reject. You cannot respond. I am so sorry. You cannot respond. Okay, so I just want to be clear, we did not meet. Okay, can I borrow your phone? Thank you. At 10:12 in the morning on Friday, an email went out that read, "Congratulations on behalf of the entire Collingswood community, you being selected as one of Collingswood staff members of the year. This year's recipients will be announced at the board meeting, but unlike previous years, we will not expect you to attend." So I'm just reading directly from the email that went out at 10:12 a.m. on Friday morning. Congratulations once again. Can I have my phone now? Thank you. So at 1:12, I responded. I sent an email to you, to Jen Floyd, to Beth Rogers, and to Rachel Gerner. "Hi, just wanted to inquire about the change regarding the presentation of the Teacher of the Year Awards at the board meeting Monday night. I was forwarded Ms. Floyd's email, which stated that while yes, their names would be read and acknowledged, they would not be honored as they have in the past years with the presentation. I was wondering if you could shed any light into this change and the reason behind it. Any information would be greatly appreciated." We did not meet. We did not discuss this. I merely inquired as to why. It was not a discussion. You did not respond to my email but asked me to call you. And you mentioned that it was because that you didn't want to be tone deaf for what was going on. So, but it was not a give and take, and there was no meeting. If there was a meeting, there is obviously an impersonator of me running around. If you could stop them, that would be great. Thank you.
Julie Schneider, 819 McGill Ave. The idea of the equity committee came up today, and it made me think. So I was part of that original equity committee that was started by Regan. I thought it was great. I know part of the idea was that progress is slow and uncomfortable and important. And my recollection is that COVID probably was one of the reasons that work stopped. So I wanted to encourage the reinstatement of that committee. It was held at the high school. There were several representatives, and it talked about a lot of different kinds of equity. So I think that would be a really good place to start. And actually, when we were on that committee, I remember we divided into 3 different groups, and there was one group that was in favor of neighborhood schools as a way to achieve equity. There was one group that was in favor of looking for other ways to maintain our neighborhood schools, but increase equity within them, which was what I was part of. And we came up with some ideas. And then there was a group that was kind of more forward thinking, what if there were no limits and we could just kind of think of some other possibilities. This is part of the reason that I'm confused about the current situation because I think none of that was followed up on or re-looked at or anything like that. So maybe that could be a place for some good conversation. So that's my recommendation. Thank you.
Yeah, Wayne Rossi, 114 East Palmer Ave. My spouse had been on the equity committee when that happened, and from her understanding, it basically had not been meeting regularly shortly before COVID happened, and that sort of it didn't keep going apart. I do think that we need more spaces. I agree strongly with that idea. I felt that earlier in the academic year, I guess like last year, the forums at the library had been very positive as far as having more conversation and less people just talking at the board, which I know is the required format for this. I think that getting back to that would be great. I know that there are hard feelings about various issues right now, and but I do think that having a more collaborative discussion process was a positive, and I don't want to see that go away. The last thing I'd note is I don't know how it's been thought of, because hearing the English language arts for the younger grades being discussed made me think I have not liked the math curriculum that's currently being used, and I found it rather confusing, as it tends to move between subjects without a clear sort of through line, and also the students don't have anything physically to go back and reference in the lesson. Their books are kind of just big workbooks that they've been working through like bit by bit, and I don't care for it. I know the previous math also wasn't popular, but I don't know what feedback you've gotten on that, but I have not found it helpful, and I've found it very trying at homework time. So I thought I would share that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. Moving on to section 17, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Have a good evening.